Hi friends, welcome to Krako's video series. I'm Sayali Ma'am. I'm one of the founders of Krako and an alumna of Ahmedabad. In today's video, I'll be explaining the entire exam of Maharashtra MBA-CET, how to apply for it, what are the dates, everything about it. And I basically want to prepare you for this particular exam, what exactly is to be expected for this exam, how to go about preparing. I'll be covering everything in this particular video. So a lot of people, when they go in for the CET exam, they are not really prepared for the exam because a lot of preparation that takes place for CAT or ZAT, and many of the students that actually take the MBA CET, MAH-CET exam have not specifically prepared for it. And it is very important to specifically prepare for this exam because a lot of questions that actually come in this exam are very different from what comes in CAT and ZAT. So a lot of the whatever you learn for CAT and ZAT is definitely useful, especially in Quant and verbal also to an extent. It will definitely be useful in this particular exam, but a lot of things are new, which means that you need to prepare specifically for this exam so that you are not surprised in the exam hall as such. So let's get started. Let's first learn about this exam. First thing that you should know is that this exam is going to be somewhere in the middle of the year. So they haven't really given out any clear dates as yet. As such, they have not given us when to expect the exam, when to expect the results. But based on the expected date of counseling, we can back infer when the process will start. So they have to do counseling around July. So which means that the results have to come before July. So it has to come around sometime in June. So we expect that the exam will be held sometime in June. The results will also come sometime in June so that counseling can begin in July. Now, my expectation is that it would be around second week of June. Admit card will start somewhere around the first week of June to second week of June. The results will come by the end of June so that counseling can begin in July. Now, the online application, we believe that the online application process window will begin sometime in the start of March, first week of March or so that you have time to apply for it. If any corrections are needed, they can give him even a corrections window. So all of that process, we expect that the process will start around May. So basically what you should think of in this preparation to this exam is that you have some even if you start at May, you will have 1 month. If you start earlier than that, you will have some lead up time to prepare for this particular exam. See, this exam window falls very different from the CAT window. So because of that, you have like dedicated time to prepare for this exam. And if you actually do prepare for this exam, you can actually do very, very well because a lot of students are so focused on CAT that they don't really look at this exam. So let's take a look at how you should go about preparing. Let us first know more about the exam as such. So this is a exam which has 200 questions in 150 minutes. So it has 200 questions in 150 minutes and there is no negative marking. So you should try to solve as many of the questions as possible. You should try to solve of these 200 questions, you should try to attempt all 200 of them. You should not leave anything because there is no negative marking. So always remember that of the 200 questions, you should try to solve as many of them as possible. Ideally, you should solve all of them. Now, there is basically in these 200 questions, you have 5 options plus 1 for correct answer, no negative marking. So essentially, remember that you have, even if you are just going by fluke, you have 1 in 5 chance of getting it right and 1/5 mark that you can possibly get from every question. Now, a good score. If you are somebody who is targeting only the top tier colleges, so there are some very, very good colleges that actually use this particular exam for their admission process, particularly JBIMS. This is a very, very good institute which has basically it is some nowadays called CEO factory almost, and it has a very, very good pedigree as such. Then there are other institutes that also use it like SIMSREE, Wellinger. So it's something that would actually help you get into a very good institute. So this is an exam that you should take seriously and prepare properly for. Now remember, this exam format is quite different from CAT, and there are a few changes from CAT that you have to actually specifically prepare for. It's some parts of it, like particularly the quant aptitude section and verbal ability and RC, that would be not similar in format but similar in skills tested to CAT. But this part, which is the abstract reasoning question, would be completely different in skills tested to what you are used to. So essentially this requires you knowing different types of questions, knowing new types of questions, and having strategies in place to solve those type of questions. So experience of those type of questions would matter a whole lot. Remember, there is no sectional time limit. So if you are somebody who struggles with quant, who struggles with verbal, this would be the ideal place where you can actually spend more time on those sections to cover up for the fact that you are not very good at that particular section. So if you are somebody who takes a lot of time to solve questions in quant, this would be helpful for you, because then you can actually take that extra time because there is no sectional time limit. Now that we understand the exam format, that there are 200 questions that we have to solve in 150 minutes, and the rough this where you have 25 from abstract reasoning, 75 from logical reasoning, analytical and logical reasoning. This is similar to our LRDI section in a way. The quant and then you have the quant section, verbal ability and reading comprehension section. So these three sections you will mostly be aware of and know how to solve. This abstract reasoning section is entirely different from what you are used to, and we'll take a close look at each section by section I will cover, so that you know exactly what to expect while going in for your exam. So let's start with the first. Let's take a look at eligibility, because a lot of people are actually very confused about whether they should give the exam at all. A lot of people who are outside Maharashtra feel that this exam is not for them, which is not the case. Remember, even JBIMS has around 18 seats which are in the All India quota. Each of these top tier institutes also have an All India quota which takes in students from outside Maharashtra. So all of these institutes have All India quota, which means around 15 to 35% of All India quota. So therefore there are lot of good colleges which are available, seats in these good colleges which are available for students outside of Maharashtra. So if you are somebody who is not a domicile of Maharashtra, whose home state is not Maharashtra, even then this is an exam you should consider, because these 18 seats are could be your chance to actually achieve the dream of going into a really good institute. The basic criteria remain the same for as that of CAT. You need a bachelor's degree. The bachelor's degree should be at least 3 years of duration. If you are giving your final year exam, the final year exams you should have given, you should be like somebody who is graduating in this particular year and sitting for the exam, where your final year exam will be finishing in April or May. So if you are already finishing the year, then you can actually give this exam. If your year finishes the next year, you will not be eligible for this particular exam. There are other restrictions when it comes to what is the minimum passing percentage. So 50% at least you should get in your graduation. It is slightly relaxed for students who are either in SC/ST or PWD category from Maharashtra. If you're from Maharashtra, then that particular barrier is lower to 45%. So this is basically the minimum eligibility criteria for actually applying for this exam. 3 years bachelor's degree, 50% in graduation, and you should at least have appeared for the final examinations. Okay, at the time of the examination. There is no age limit. As far as the home and all India seats, how many seats are home state seats, how many seats are all India seats, that changes from college to college, but expect it to be around 15 to 35% for different colleges. Remember that there are 5 types of home state students. So even if you are not somebody who is currently residing in Maharashtra, or who did not do their graduation from Maharashtra, still there are some cases where you would be considered as a home state student. So the 5 categories are: if you have completed your HSC degree, the 12th standard equivalent board, or you have done your graduation, you will be considered, if you have done at least a diploma or bachelor's degree, you will be considered a Maharashtra state student. If you have if either of your parents is a domicile of Maharashtra, then you would be considered a home state student. If your parents are Government of India employees such that they are posted in Maharashtra, then you would be considered as a home state student. If your parents are Government of Maharashtra employees, even if they are posted outside of Maharashtra, you will be considered a home state student. And finally, those who belong to the Maharashtra-Belgaum border, I believe this is called MBK region. If you belong to that, that is also considered as a home state student. Okay, so these are the eligibility criteria that you have to meet. Remember, even if you are a non-Maharashtra student, there are still all India seats that could actually help you get into a very, very good school. So do not feel as if this exam is not for you. Even it has a lot of all India seats, and a lot of students don't actually take this exam because they feel that they will not have any seats to take base, because there are very few all India seats, but there are enough all India seats for you to actually consider taking this exam even if you are not a Maharashtra student. Now let us take a look at the different sections. We'll begin with logical reasoning, which has 75 questions. It is definitely the make or break section of Maharashtra CET. Now logical reasoning, in this case it is a mixture actually of analytical reasoning, of logical reasoning and also critical reasoning. A lot of the reasoning is actually verbal and critical reasoning, which you would not normally expect in the LR section of most exams. So let's take a look at what exactly comes and how often does it come. The biggest chunk of this section is actually arrangements. Arrangements and puzzles, Einstein's puzzle, seating arrangement, people seated and looking in different directions, sitting in a line, sitting on around a circle. So seating arrangement and arrangement based puzzles like Einstein's puzzles come the most often. That's the biggest chunk of the 75 questions. You can expect 25 to 30 questions at the very least based on arrangements alone. So you should be rock solid in arrangements. So see all the concept videos. So in this particular course, we'll be covering arrangements in super detail, like from all types of arrangements, because this is extremely important. No matter what you do, make sure that you are solving a lot of arrangements questions. One of the things that I want you to do in this course while you're going through the courses, make sure you have seen all of the arrangements videos, concept videos, taken all the concept tests and gone and solved arrangements based questions in the actual study room. So the study room, make sure you solve at least like 10 to 15 sets from arrangements in the study room. It's extremely important that you put in that time to actually be very, very good at this, because the other parts of this particular section are slightly more difficult than the arrangement questions. The arrangement questions are deterministic. You can definitely know for sure that you have solved it properly and correctly. The remaining things are maybe slightly you can argue one way or the other. You won't be sure that whether or not you have gotten the verbal reasoning correct or not, but this you can know for sure. So you should not make any mistake there. Now in the verbal reasoning part, basically you will have critical reasoning based on statement. So you will get a statement and you will be asked, okay, which information is in line with this particular statement? You will be given two statements and you will be asked, are they cause and effect? What is the relationship between the statements? You will be given a statement and you will be asked, what are the assumptions implicit in the statements? So these kind of questions based on statements, where you have to consider the critical reasoning aspect of it. How are they logically related? What information would actually strengthen it? What would weaken it? What is in line with it, what is not in line with it, what is contrary to the statement? All of those things are basically critical reasoning based skills. So learn critical reasoning very, very well and then solve a few questions based on this type, because the basic skills that you're going to need to solve these questions are critical reasoning skills: strengthening, weakening, assumptions, inferences. If you have those four skills properly done, then you will be able to solve these kind of questions much better than if you actually just look at the questions of this type. Critical reasoning is super important for solving these type of questions. Now you have a few other kind of puzzles or simple word problems. Basically word problems which essentially take you time to solve based on the fact that they require some amount of trial and error as such to solve. So you'll be given a word and you'll be asked to find out how many letters are. Like you'll have to pick letters from the word and you'll be asked questions specific to those letters. How many words can be formed? So a lot of these word problems that are there, word-based problems that are there, essentially take a lot of time. They are difficult to solve because they are time consuming. You have to consider all the combinations that are possible. You have to consider all the pairs of letters that are possible. So they are generally the time consuming problems and they are easy to get it wrong. So though these questions come a lot, these will generally not be the scoring areas. Again, remember you have 200 questions, 150 minutes. So there will be some questions that you should prioritize over others. This in general would be the ones where you will find it slightly more difficult, slightly more time consuming. If you are really aiming for the 140 plus or 150 plus, you should try and answer all questions. But these questions will be a time sink in many cases. Then you have your simpler logical reasoning questions like directions, blood relations, coding, decoding, input output. A lot of input output questions comes and they are very scoring. So remember that all of these simpler questions, these are generally banking logical reasoning questions. They are simpler questions and they are super scoring areas. You should absolutely get them right. They are easier to solve, and if you solve 5 questions based on this particular type, if you see the videos related to it, you will be able to solve all questions from this type. They are generally not difficult questions. Now you have inequality symbol based conclusions. These are also something that comes often in banking, where you see that you are given certain conditions or a long inequality statement, basically like, okay, P is greater than Q is less than equal to R is greater than S or something like that, and you will have to pick which of the specific conclusions you can draw, whether P is greater than S or P is greater than R. What can you actually infer based on this long this as such? So that is essentially what is inequality based conclusion. Or you might have disparate statements that you have to string together and to get this particular long statement, and then draw conclusions based on it. So again, this is something that comes often in banking. If you have seen banking exams, you will be familiar with these type of questions. Again, these 4 things that you see over here, these are easier in general. This would be, this part over here would be harder. This would be moderate. So the easy part you should ace completely. Again, directions and scheduling have not come recently, but these have come historically in Maharashtra-CET, so it's something that you should know how to do. But this part entirely is something which is much easier to do than this part, which is the critical reasoning part. Much more, you can be much more surer of your answers than you can be in the statement-based reasoning parts. And arrangements are generally moderate questions. They are slightly time-consuming, but still doable. So remember, the easier parts you should definitely not skip. This part should be the next. The last part that you should try to solve is the statement-based conclusions and statement-based reasoning. It is important you know how to do it, but they'll be in general harder than the other questions that you have in this particular section. Now let's take a look at the next section, which is the VARC section. A big chunk of it, these are 25 questions, a big chunk of it comes in the form of RCs. And the RCs are super easy. They are not like your RCs from CAT or ZAT. You do not have a lot of inference-based questions. You have direct questions based on the passage. Which of the following is true as per the passage? What reason was given in the passage for X? According to the passage, why does this person do this? So you have to just look up at the passage, see the specific detail and answer the question. Very, very easy questions. About 15 to 18 questions will come. You will get 2 to 3 RC passages, mostly 2. They are slightly on the longer side, say 700 words or 800 words. Sometimes like even 500 words come. So assume 500 to 700 words, longish passages, but super easy questions. So you don't have to think a lot, you don't have to reason a lot. You just have to look back up and find the specific detail where the answer is given and answer the question. So quickly reading is important. Going back and referring to the passage is important. Making sure you get the details right is important, because this isn't a inference based RC. These are specifically objective RCs. Just look up the specific information and see what information or what particular detail is given and answer the question. Should not get any question wrong in this. Now there are also a lot of vocabulary based questions over here. You will see a lot of questions which are fill in the blanks, close passages. In the earlier this you also had synonyms, antonyms or shuffled words, but mostly vocabulary is now coming in recent years as close passages or fill in the blanks. So vocabulary, knowing which word fits in what context, what is the meaning of the words, would help you quite a bit in this particular section. Vocabulary would be the next biggest thing for this particular section. Then you have a lot of grammar, this find out which part of the sentence has error. You will have a sentence which is split into 4 parts. You have to find which part of the sentence has an error. You would have to figure out which part of the sentence is incorrectly used. You would have to figure out which would be like, you will be given an underlined part and you will be asked which of the following is the correct way to phrase this underlined part. And you will also have how can you connect 2 sentences, which phrase or connecting phrase can be used to combine 2 sentences. So grammar and basically writing ability does play a significant part. This is, I think, after vocabulary, the third most important. If you consider in the level of difficulty, this is the easier part. You will also have parajumbles which are easy. You should not be missing those out. Odd one out, para completion, match the columns have kind of been removed or omitted in the recent years, but para jumbles were still there. So parajumbles will be the easier part, the RCs will be the easier part. This in general would be slightly harder, and this part would be the moderately difficult part. Essentially, it's not moderately difficult. Essentially, if you know if you have a good vocabulary, this is easy. If you don't have a good vocabulary, you'll have to think a lot to figure out which word fits or which word doesn't fit. But if you have a good vocabulary, this would also be another scoring section for you, which you can get done quickly. Remember, vocabulary doesn't take a lot of time to answer the questions, so you should be able to do it fairly quickly. The scoring areas would be the RCs. If you have a good vocabulary, the fill in the blanks and closed passages, and the parajumbles as such. Remember, one parajumble if you solve, you get 5 questions. So you get like the parajumbles is like which of these questions, which of these sentences would be the first sentence, which of these sentences would be the second sentence of the series. So normally when you solve a parajumble question, you get 1 question right. Here if you solve a parajumble question, you get 5 questions right. So it's very important that you do parajumbles and you do that properly. So these would be the scoring areas. Grammar in general would be something which would be slightly harder than the other parts of the section. Now if you think of it strategically, make sure that you do the RCs first, you do the vocabulary first, you do the parajumbles first. After that, make sure you do the grammar part. Anything which is harder in the vocabulary, you can do later on. Now let's come to the quantitative aptitude part. Quantitative aptitude in general is easier, much easier than that actually comes in CAT. But there are specific types of quant questions where essentially they add a layer of difficulty where they should not be. So instead of giving you a simple arithmetic question, what they will do is they will give you 2 arithmetic questions combined in one. So you have to calculate x based on like some arithmetic question. You have to calculate y based on some arithmetic question, where x is the speed of a train or y is the speed of another train. And then you have to say which of these 2 is greater, whether x is greater or y is greater. Or you will be given that, okay, quantity 1 is the amount of mixture, amount of solution A that has to be mixed in B, and quantity Y is amount of grain A that has to be mixed with grain B. And that's a simple arithmetic question, 2 simple arithmetic questions that have to be solved to actually compare X with Y or quantity A with quantity B. Now these are not difficult questions, they just become lengthy because you have 2 questions to solve in the place of 1. You get the mark for 1 question, but essentially you have to solve 2 questions. So a lot of these are basically just based on arithmetic, geometry and algebra. Solving equations, solving arithmetic questions of time, speed, distance, time and work, of ratio and proportion, all of that, or profit and loss, interest, that is what you'll have to solve to actually solve these type of questions. Even geometry comes in form of surface area, area of the triangle, all of that you'll have to solve basically you'll have to solve it twice, part A and part B, just to pick which of these would be the higher value. Remember, in some cases, instead of actually solving it out, just try to figure out which would be the higher value or which would be the lower value or whether they will be equal, rather than solving it out completely. It might not be needed. For example, if you can see from the area that the area will be above say 100 square feet and you know the second part will be much lesser than 100 square feet, you need not actually get the actual values. Based on your sense of how big something is, you can actually answer some of these questions without going into the final value as such. A lot of time needs to be saved in the quantitative section because you remember that you don't have a lot of time. This is also a very important aspect of acing this exam, whether you can solve these questions in the small amount of time that is given. So saving every second, every minute when it comes to solving these type of questions is extremely important. Another type of question that comes often is number series, finding out the missing number of the series, the next number of the series, the odd element in the series. So number series is something that you should practice very well. You can expect 5 to 10 questions from this particular type. Mostly 5, 10 is unlikely. Now, one section which actually comes often in MAH-CET but lesser in CAT is probability, permutations and combinations, especially how many ways can you arrange the letters of this word, how many ways can you pick balls from a basket. All of those questions you need to practice for this particular exam. There will be certain simplification expressions that you will be given, like an answer, okay, this square plus 1.75 square is equal to something 3.25 cube, and you'll have to find out what the missing value is. So essentially this is just a difficult to solve question. You will have to use simplification as much as possible. You have to use guesstimates as much as possible. Try to simplify the work that you have to do, because if the options are wide apart, you need not be very accurate in your answer. So always remember, in such type of questions, saving time should be your priority rather than getting an accurate answer. Then you have other questions which are basically the DI part of this particular section. You have DI based on caselets. So in the recent papers, you had DI basically based on ratio and proportion, or rather essentially splitting up the information that is given into subparts. This is something similar to Venn diagrams. So if you were good at splitting ratio and proportion and in splitting information into parts, subparts and sets, this is something that you would ace. There were other also DIs based on charts, bar charts, line charts. All of that is also important. So remember, there's this big chunk of this section which comes as part of DI. And if you're somebody who aces DI, do that first. They are generally easier sets, not difficult sets, not DI from like CADs or ZAT. They are generally easier. And if you do one set, you get the 4-5 questions right very quickly. So if you're somebody who is very good at calculation, make sure that you do these parts fairly quickly. Then you have a good chunk done. Then you can go to the other parts of the passage, other parts of the particular section. Okay, so this is something that you should keep in mind when it comes to the quantitative section. In algebra, there's a specific type of question that comes very often, which is called as quant comparison. We have a specific video for it, where you'll have a quadratic equation in X, you will have a quadratic equation in Y. You'll have to solve them to get the two possible values of X, two possible values of Y, or like a range of X, range of Y. And then you'll have to say whether X is greater than Y always, Y is greater than X always, etc. We have a proper video for it. Make sure you do that very, very well, because there is 5 questions for that. So this is something that you should definitely ace. It is a very small concept. Knowing how to do this is extremely, like, it will take you half an hour to ace and half an hour and with guaranteed 5 questions. So definitely that is something that you should do very, very, very well. Okay, now let's come to the last section which you would have the least experience of, that is abstract reasoning. Abstract reasoning is entirely visual reasoning. In the recent years, it has become completely visual reasoning. Earlier, there used to be other questions based on odd one out or verbal reasoning, but now almost it has become completely visual reasoning. Visual reasoning essentially is that you will be given some diagrams and you will be asked what is the next diagram in the series. So these are the 4 diagrams, something has changed. Okay, this direction, this direction, this direction, this direction. So what is the next? So you'll say, okay, it should be in this direction. So that is the next one in the series. So this is essentially the entire idea of visual reasoning. You find out what is the relation between the different parts of the figure, and once you get that relationship, it is easy to predict what should come next in the series. It can be not just next in the series, it can be even odd one out. So if you have that something like this and you have one of the, these are suppose the 5 things that are given, and instead of having something over here, if you have like say 2 arrows, you can say very quickly visually that everything else has 1 arrow, this has 2 arrows, so this is the odd one out. You might have even analogies. So for example, you can say that suppose you have this is to this is to what? Then you can say in the first figure to the second figure, the internal figure is pushed out, the external figure is pushed inside. So you'll have to do the same thing over here. The inside has a rectangle, or push it out, and here the inside should be a circle which should be pushed in. So this basic visual reasoning, finding out the relationship with A and B and trying to replicate it across a series or across analogies is what is required. Basically, your job is see a visual representation and identify what is the relationship between visual representation A and B. If you see a evolving relationship, you know exactly how to solve it. We'll be covering this in detail. Make sure you do not miss any particular video from this, because it's extremely important that you have a very good hold of visual reasoning. So this is the entire idea of the sections when it comes to Maharashtra CET. As you can see, many specific questions that come over here which you would not be generally used to if you have just prepared for CAT or ZAT. So let us see how to actually ace this particular exam. In this particular course, I'll be covering every new type of question very well in every separate video, so that you have exposure to them. These are not difficult questions. Remember, this exam is not harder than CAT. What makes it harder is the lack of exposure most students have to this particular exam. A lot of students do not see the previous year's papers, do not take a lot of mocks before actually appearing for the exam, do not know the different type of questions sets that are there. So the important thing to remember is that please make sure that you see every single concept video that we have added in this series. We have added them so that you get exposure to all the different types. So none of the question types is a surprise to you in the exam hall. So make sure you see every single concept video, take every accompanying concept test, And remember, every weekend you should try to practice a mock. Mocks are extremely important because they will give you the exam preparedness, the familiarity with the questions that will not come just from watching the concept videos. So make sure you see every single concept video, you take every single concept test, and every weekend you take the associated mock. Okay, so this is my plan for Maharashtra CET. I hope you guys are able to benefit from this. Even those who are starting with very little time left to the exam, make sure that you use every bit of the course, because this course can see you through, sail through this exam. Okay, so please actually make sure that you see every single concept video, take every single concept test, and take the 5 mocks that are associated with this particular course. Thank you for tuning in, and best of luck to all of you.